On today's episode, we are going to be talking to Andrew Levine of Koinos Group about blockchain. It's going to be really interesting. Hope you enjoy it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lawyers with Game. If you're interested in learning more about legal issues in the esports and video game spaces, you're in the right place. My name is Darius Gambino, and I am first and foremost a lifelong gamer. I've played on every home system from the original Atari to the Super Nintendo to now the PlayStation 5. I'm also an intellectual property attorney with over 25 years of experience advising clients on issues related to patents, trademarks, and copyrights. I'm with the firm of Saul, Ewing in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and you can find me on Twitter as @PhillyIP. If you're up for a game, you can find me on the PlayStation Network as EaglesFan71. With me today is my colleague Angie Cespedes. Angie and I are both members of the Video Gaming and Esports group here at Saul Ewing. Angie, can you say a few words about your background and your practice?
Absolutely, Darius. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Angie Cespedes. Speaking of Atari, by the way, Darius, I just spent the weekend reliving the 1980s and my youth building the newly released Lego Atari 2600 set from, it's amazing. Maybe I'll have to show it on a future show. But it's an identical replica of the original, even the joystick. So like Darius, I am one of the leaders of Saul Ewing's National Sports and Entertainment and Video Gaming and Esports practice groups. And I am also a member of the firm's e-discovery, technology, and crypto and blockchain task forces. I'm also vice chair of the American Bar Association's Sports and Entertainment Industries Forum. I've been practicing for over 20 years now, and I'm based out of Saul Ewing's Miami, Florida office. My practice, a little tiny bit different from Darius, consists of representing clients in commercial litigation, business disputes, and their related corporate IP, real estate transactions, and negotiations. And my clients include international and national professional sports teams, leagues, federations, their stadiums, arenas, video game companies, app developers, private equity firms, private membership clubs, and a whole host of other clients. And I'm really excited about today's episode.
Thanks, Angie. And our special guest today is Andrew Levine from Koinos and the Koinos Blockchain. Andrew, welcome to the program. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. If you want to know more about our law firm, you can visit us at www.saul.com. Please keep in mind that this series is intended to be a general and high-level discussion of legal issues in the video gaming and esports spaces. It is not intended as legal advice. If you need actual legal advice, please reach out to myself or Angie, and we'll be happy to help you. So today we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, really timely, the creation of a blockchain. We hear about blockchains all the time, whether it comes to cryptocurrency, NFTs, but Andrew has been involved in the creation of multiple blockchains, and he's here to tell us all about it. So I'm going to kick it to Angie for our first question for Andrew.
So Andrew, I know Darius and I have both been following you for a long time. And before we get started, I just wanted to say how refreshing and inspiring it is to see how much you love what you do and how inspired you are to be doing what you're doing. So in that same vein, your team was instrumental in creating the Steem blockchain. And by the way, I'm wearing my blockchain necklace today, in tribute to this interview. Now, the Steem blockchain is the blockchain behind the social media application Steemit. Can you tell us all a little bit about your involvement with creating that blockchain, who and what it was intended for, and why you eventually moved on?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. And I'm really excited to be on this podcast because Koinos is really so perfectly fitted for the gaming industry as the first free-to-use blockchain. And I think that's one of the things that's been holding back the adoption of this technology in gaming. But to get to your question about Steem and what motivated us, so I actually joined the Steem project. The Steemit Inc. was the company behind that a little after it launched. But my teammates at Koinos Group and my co-founders at Koinos Group were the actual developers of that blockchain who built it and launched it. So I know a lot about the creation of that blockchain. And then I still got there very early on. And I basically helped shepherd that blockchain to much wider adoption as the head of marketing and communications. And so I think what it fundamentally comes down to is that what me and my teammates all believe, what united us when I joined the team, we very quickly bonded and became a very tight-knit group. It stayed together for 4 years, shepherding that blockchain through 23 hard forks, which is the very difficult process of upgrading blockchains, for those who don't know. Also a problem that we solved with Koinos. But it was the belief that this technology what makes it so valuable is that it is a technology that helps protect people's privacy, security, and their freedom. And that makes it something very special. But the problem that we saw was that all the existing blockchains were very inaccessible. And so that's the problem that we were trying to solve with Steem, which was a social blockchain, and it was a blockchain that didn't have fees. And so there was a very practical use case, and you didn't have to pay fees for everything little thing you did. And the reason why it operated like that was because we knew that nobody would use a social application if they had to pay fees for everything. So it was a very practical reason. But ultimately, that decision had major consequences. Like leading to one of the biggest blockchain games being built on Steem, and that's now called Splinterlands. But yeah, it all came back to accessibility, and those values and those goals are still what motivate us today.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned all those different things, and just so people understand, Steemit is a social blockchain, kind of like a social messaging service, but it incentivized people to post by giving them crypto in exchange, which is a really interesting concept. And then you mentioned the Hive blockchain, where Splinterlands, probably one of the top 3 most popular play to earn crypto games, resides right now. And the Steem blockchain at some point forked, and the Hive blockchain was created from it. Can you talk a little bit about that fork and how the Steem blockchain turned into the Hive blockchain, which now supports games like Splinterlands?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. It was a big event in our history and played a critical role in the creation of our company, Koinos Group, and the blockchain Koinos. And the short version is, and I think your audience will be able to appreciate that effectively Steem was on the receiving end of a hostile takeover. It wasn't illegal, it wasn't criminal, but somebody, a guy named Justin Sun, purchased the company that we worked at and acquired their tokens, and then used those tokens in addition to some assistance from exchanges to effectively take over the governance of that blockchain, to take over control of that blockchain, which the governance mechanism of that blockchain allowed to happen. This was a vulnerability. And and then what happened next was that the community said, okay, if you want it so bad, you can have it. The beauty of open source software, which most blockchains are, we think all blockchains should be, is that you can just make a copy of it and run your own version. And so that's what the community did with Hive. And actually, if you go look at the code base, my teammates, my co-founders at Koinos Group, are still the largest code contributors to Hive, even though they didn't work on it a day in their lives. And that's because it's a copy of Steem, still providing a lot of value, still used by Splinterlands. We're very close with that team. In fact, the feedback and input that we've gotten from that team over the years and even up until today has played a critical role in the decisions that we've made with how we designed Koinos. And so after those events happened, me and my teammates, we all resigned in protest, and we decided it's time to start our own company, use the knowledge that we've gained running this blockchain that was used by more than any other blockchain in the world for years. Take that knowledge and insight and build the next generation of blockchains, specifically with an eye toward what are feeless applications like social networks, like Splinterlands, like games. What are they going to need from a general purpose blockchain like Ethereum, but without fees? And ideally, totally free to use. Our objective was to go a step beyond no fees to the same experience as the internet, free to use.
So let's shift gears for a second and talk about Koinos and where you are with the Koinos blockchain. You've had, it sounds like, a very busy year. You've gone from testnet to mainnet on the blockchain, on the Koinos blockchain, or getting ready to, at least for the at the very least, and also you've had a baby, so you've given birth to almost like two different things. So it's my understanding that you're now almost finished, or close to being finished with a certain new blockchain, which I just discussed, called Koinos Blockchain. Can you tell us more about that blockchain and who it's intended for, what it's intended for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see the source of confusion. So yeah, where we're at now is that we've completed the development of the mainnet features. And actually, literally today, we'll be announcing the relaunch of our testnet next Tuesday, August 23rd. And that testnet will include all of the innovative features that we've spent the last 2.5 years building that will be featured in mainnet. But we want to test those features for at least a month or two before we release the mainnet. And so depending on how the testing goes, then we'll have a better idea of when we can launch the mainnet. And as to what sets Koinos apart is, like I said, it'll be the first blockchain that's free to use. And that's owing to the Mana system that we developed very much off of the work that we pioneered in the Steem blockchain, but taking it to the next level and making it so that people can begin using a blockchain and begin using decentralized applications without even having to acquire an account or even hold tokens. There are a couple of other things that make Koinos unique. I alluded to before, the fact that we can upgrade individual pieces of the blockchain without having to execute a hard fork. If you've heard about ETH 2.0 and just the chronic delays owing to this process of having to do these massive upgrades all at once, we developed a system where the upgrades can be made individually and without disrupting network operation. We call it infinite upgradability. And this allows for the blockchain to actually evolve very rapidly and just get better and better very, very quickly. And then the other thing that we're really excited about is our novel consensus algorithm, which I know is probably way outside the scope, but it's something called proof of burn. And instead of having the wasteful mining of proof of work that's environmentally unfriendly and more important, imposes very high costs to running the network, it interprets burning tokens as virtual miners. And so it's not quite proof of stake. It's not based on how many tokens you hold, but it's based on how many tokens you burn or sacrifice or destroy. And this also has really interesting properties from a token perspective, because what you wind up with is a digital currency that can go anywhere in the world in seconds, that has no fees, and both inflates and deflates depending on how much demand there is for the network. So that's Koinos.
Great. It's funny because, I think, and I think most people know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, not where he is or who he actually is, or she is, because that's entirely possible. But it strikes me that I don't know, and I don't know if you agree or not, that he ever intended for this to all get so big. He was the creator of Bitcoin blockchain and all of the the burden on the environment. It appears to me that if you were sitting here today, if you walked in the door, which is entirely possible as everyone else has moved to Florida, I think he would be thrilled with what you guys at Koinos have done, because reading his original white paper, I get the sense that's the way it should be. That's what he envisioned. Most people, I don't know if they know this or not, but Koinos isn't a play off the word coin. Really, it is. I mean, it is. But what it means is common, open to everybody. It's a collaboration, right, Andrew? I mean, what do you think Satoshi would think about what it is you're doing at Koinos?
I like to think that he'd like it. We definitely view ourselves as very much in the ethos of Bitcoin. If Satoshi were trying to solve a very different problem, he'd solve it this way. The thing about a general purpose blockchain like Koinos is that, unlike Bitcoin, it's really intended to be a world computer. It's intended to be something that can run unstoppable applications like the apps on your phone, but maintained by a neutral network that isn't owned or controlled by anyone. And so when you're looking at that functionality, efficiency becomes far more important than just a decentralized currency, right? If you want as many people as possible being able to have access to these applications, then you want to make sure that the financial burden on them is as low as possible. And so while the environmental impact is also maybe important, honestly, it's secondary for us. What we're looking to build is the most efficient system possible. And it just so happens that the more efficient you are, the less energy you waste. And that's because, even though Koinos is free to use, the way that that mechanism works is that somebody ultimately has to hold some coin somewhere that contains mana, which I'm talking to gamers, they understand the concept of mana immediately. It's like health or stamina. And as the blockchain gets used, that mana goes down, those tokens get locked, but they get unlocked too after 5 days. And so mana has this regenerative property so that you can keep playing your game without having to constantly tap up your tokens again. And so you can have that free to use experience. And then developers can delegate their mana to their users, and then that's how the users can use without even holding tokens. And the whole thing can scale quite nicely while also mitigating overuse of the network. But if the cost of running the network is extremely high, then that is ultimately going to impact somebody. Yes, it's in the opportunity cost of their tokens getting locked. But if you have to have millions of dollars locked up just to enable a few people to play your game, that's not going to scale. That's not going to have the effect and the impact that we want. And so, sorry, I kind of veered off. I'd love to tackle the question of Satoshi. And just say that if you go back and read that white paper, it was very clear that one of the things that was very important to him was egalitarianism and the idea that everybody would be able to participate in this network. Everybody would be able to use the computers that they already had to participate in this economic system, and even mine to earn some of the tokens. And so you could theoretically, starting with nothing but what you already have, get this digital currency, which could be a truly peer-to-peer decentralized currency. And if you look at Bitcoin as it is now, it's not those things. And so with proof of burn, we've gone back to that, and we've created a system where you can use the computer that you already have because your hardware doesn't matter. What matters is how much you burn, but you can burn any amount. You can burn 5 coin, and that's the size of your virtual miner, and you can produce blocks and you could earn coin rewards. It's going to take a while. The odds, you're not going to make a fortune, but you can participate. The system is open to everyone.
Yeah, and just one sentence, because I'm anticipating our audience is like, oh God, I have no idea what we're talking about now. Some of us anyway. So Bitcoin, uses a concept, called proof of work. And I'm oversimplifying here, but this is just base level. And then you have Ethereum that uses a concept called proof of stake. And or about to anyway, or trying to move from proof of work to proof of stake. That's what's going on over there now. They're having scalability issues, is what they're having, and again, that's an oversimplification. Koinos is now taking it to a whole other level with their proof of burn concept. And one of the benefits, and one of the things I think just the general public will appreciate, is that it's not taxing, not as taxing, not anywhere near as taxing on the environment, and it's free. Anyway, I'll hand it over to Darius now, but I just kind of wanted to give a very basic overview of that in case anyone wants to go do some additional research.
Well, one thing I'd love to add is that to participate in Ethereum's proof of stake, it is required that you have something like $48,000 worth of ETH just to participate in this network. And that's not our vision for a truly decentralized financial system, economic system that everyone has the ability to participate in. That is a very high barrier to entry. And the thing with proof of stake is that it is designed to make the rich richer, which isn't the kind of direction that we're trying to go with things. Ethereum's great, but I think those are problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to transition now and talk about your tokens, which are called Coin, KOIN. People can go out and obtain these. And the whole concept of having something that is essentially free to play or free to use for the user. So the buyers of coins are really the developers of the decentralized apps, or the people that want to use the network. The users of let's say there was a game on the Koinos network, the players of the game don't need to buy coins to play. And that's one of the things I think that really, from my view, separates this Koinos blockchain from Ethereum or some others, where you have play to earn games. We mentioned Splinterlands, but Gods Unchained and Axie Infinity are two games that really require you to convert ETH into their proprietary currency just to play. And I think that is a real barrier for a lot of people. And it would be outside the context of games, any kind of app where you're asking someone to pay a lot up front, and including gas fees to convert ETH to whatever their normal token is that they use. So can you just talk real briefly about that, about, kind of what your intentions are with Coin and how the user interfaces with Coin versus the developer?
Yeah, so one of the things that we saw with Steem, and the way I really viewed my role on that team, was chief developer advocate. I was trying to, with these protocols, developers are your customers. And so you really want to be targeting them and explaining the value proposition to them. And with Steem, we had a no fees design, a feeless design. And yet I was spending all of my time with developers explaining to them how they had to deal with the fact that they still had to purchase accounts. And that in order to take advantage of the feeless nature of it, they had to stake, they had to acquire the tokens, or their users had to acquire the tokens, consciously stake those tokens, think about how many tokens they needed to stake, understand how the system works. And this was seeing firsthand that this was an insurmountable barrier to entry. Everybody else was thinking, oh, it's feeless, that's good enough. And what I was seeing as boots on the ground was that it's a big step forward, but it's not making a dent. Ethereum is still doing much, much better because it has smart contracts. And so we haven't tilted the balance. And so these are things that we went after with Koinos. So on Koinos, accounts are free. Just like on Ethereum and Bitcoin, they actually solved that problem just fine. On Steem, we wanted to have human readable usernames, or the architect of that blockchain wanted to have human readable usernames so that if you looked at the blockchain, you could read a username. But the thing is, nobody looks at the blockchain. So, but that costs money. That consumes storage. And so that cost needs to be borne by somebody. And then there was that conscious staking mechanism. And so Mana is absolutely objectively a first of its kind in the blockchain space. Because what it does is, and users can purchase coin too. If you want to know that if you want to play your games get more free usage out of your games, or make more DeFi trades for free, you can acquire your coin. Or if you want to, basically the coin, Mana represents network resources, a right to network resources. And so whoever holds that coin has a perpetual right to network resources, and that can provide value to users, but it can also provide value to developers. And so I think your point, Angie, was absolutely right, that developers and maybe investors too, not that this is investment advice, are going to be very attracted to this asset, because all of a sudden, as the developer, I can onboard more users into my app. Or if I'm a large stakeholder, I can actually deploy my capital in perpetuity without spending down. I can deploy the capital without spending down the capital. But the important point that I wanted to make is that the way we design Koinos is that once you have coin in your account, you can just use the blockchain and you don't have to think about staking. And one of the nice things about Mana that is, as far as I know, different than any other design is that developers can very specifically target only their users. This is different than our previous design, where it's just saying, you're using my app, I'll pay for this transaction's Mana. I'm not paying in tokens, I'm providing the Mana, and I can withdraw that whenever I want. But also, large stakeholders can also deploy that Mana to help bootstrap applications. And so in this way, investors can actually deploy their capital without spending it down, which we think is pretty unique in like economic history, and has pretty wide-ranging repercussions. But the thing that really sets Mana apart is that you don't even have to think about staking or anything like that. If you have coin or somebody else has coin and they're delegating it to you, you just use the blockchain, and then the blockchain locks the coin behind the scenes, and all you see is a pretty Mana bar that's going down and going back up. And so you can self-regulate your behaviors in a very intuitive and even a fun way.
So Andrew, while we're on the subject of Mana, which you describe as a property of coin, a very important property of coin, but it's not a token itself. Can you just give us a real life example of how that would work for our viewers who may not be able to grasp the concept? And in that same vein, I'd love for you to talk about the elimination or trying to eliminate gas fees, and maybe we can talk about for NFTs as one example, where gas fees become a real issue on the various platforms.
Gas fees are a pain. Nobody likes them, and they wind up being very volatile. And actually, it's the volatility that it's a killer. That's the killer. Because if something might cost you 50 cents or $50, doesn't make a difference. You have to behave as if it's going to be $50, $100, $200. It's a killer to the user experience of an application, especially a game. And so we really wanted to take away that volatility and take away that negative user experience and make it something positive. And so we have, and you can see this operating on testnet version 3. We had the Mana system, and testnet version 4 will obviously also have it, and the mainnet will have it too. And the basic mechanism, the basic way that it works is that if you have one coin, that coin has one mana. Simple. If you have 10 coins, you have 10 mana. If you have 100 coins, you have 100 mana. And you can't have more than one mana per coin. And then as you use, let's say you have 100 coin and you do something that costs 10 mana. 10 of your mana out of the 100 will be consumed, and 10 of your coin will be locked for 5 days. And so now you'll have 90 mana, which you can use on other things, and you'll have 90 coin, which are liquid, but you'll have 10 coin that are locked. And after 5 days, those 10 coin will be unlocked, and you'll get that mana back. Now, actually, the way it works is even smoother. And so you'll constantly have some mana regenerating over that 5 days. It's not binary. The moment you use it, it starts regenerating. And a lot of people ask, why the 5 days? And the answer is not exciting. It's because people operate on weekly schedules. And the whole reasoning behind the design of Mana is all about creating an intuitive and fun user experience for a blockchain. And so the 5-day regen period will just enable people to come in on Monday, play their game whenever they play it, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, and then stop for the weekend, come back on Monday, or whenever they stop, because obviously it's not in line with whatever day of the week, right? You can customize the experience to yourself with an intuitive understanding of how far your mana gets you and for how long.
Andrew, this is really interesting stuff. Coin, mana. I mean, I'm excited. I might go out and buy some coin this week, actually, just because I want to have some. Really appreciate you coming on. If anyone out there listening has any questions about any of the legal issues that we've raised on today's podcast, drop them into the comments, and Angie and I will try to answer them without providing any actual legal advice, of course. Until next time, I'm Darius. This is Angie, and we are Lawyers with Game. We'll see you next time.